Welcome to the E-Show with Neil Ravin. With over 1,000 NCAA commitments, the EHL is the proven path to college. Turn it up and learn more about the college placement leader at the Division II and III levels.
Welcome to the E-Show, presented by the Penalty Box Foundation. The Foundation's mission centers around their daily motto, "We take care of our own," as they help out all of those within the hockey community who have experienced a catastrophic event. Learn more at penaltyboxfoundation.org. What's up? My name is Neil Ravin. This is episode number 69 of the E-Show, and on this week's episode, we feature another Original Six team and the Connecticut RoughRiders. Stephen Brown is the associate head coach of the RoughRiders and serves as Eric Lynn's right-hand man. Brown and Lynn are the only coaching duo that has remained intact and in the same location for all 8 seasons of the EHL. Brown takes time on the podcast to talk about his relationship with Lynn, as well as look back on what he calls the toughest season of coaching he's ever gone through. To put a bow on things at the end, the E-Crew comes together to discuss all of the great players that have hit the ice in Norwalk, Connecticut. I'm joined now by Stephen Brown, the associate head coach of the Connecticut RoughRiders. How's it going, Brownie?
Good this morning.
Thanks for coming on the podcast. A long time coming. We've talked about this for a number of years, and I know you're a big-time listener of the podcast, so I finally have you on for the first time, of course, to talk about, first and foremost, the 2020-21 season. I know there's a lot of, we could say, negatives, but let's go back and find the positives from this past season.
Yeah, so that's a tough question as far as the positives are concerned, meaning that doing this for so many years, going into 38, 39 seasons of coaching, that you're expected, or there is a rhythm to the season. Yep. And the season was disrupted pre-season last year when you and I spoke with the interview with Eric and I, and procedural, how things go. There's you get sort of complacent because you know how things go year to year, but this was an extremely unprecedented season. On a side note, the EHL and you, Neil, an absolute tremendous job getting us through this first year of pandemic. Very pessimistic in the beginning of the year as far as just going week to week. Yep. And then when our team got COVID in November, I thought we were done for the year, and we went all the way through. So just on a side note, a fantastic job to the staff of the EHL and everyone else that's helping out. So positive wise, it was just the ability to help the athlete, the student athlete, during this time. And when the parents gave those children to us in this crisis, Eric and I and our staff had a tremendous responsibility. Yep. And that, just like you guys were able to do it with the league, that we were able to run to the finish line, even with the adversity of having COVID on the team, and get through this season. That was the positive, because I remember saying to Eric, right after our exit meetings, and when the league announced after the NHL decided to shut down, if we could only just get into the building next year and just practice, that would be a huge win. Yeah. And we ended up, besides the break that we had to take, that we were able to do that. And so we were still able to teach on the ice and off the ice, learn tactics and technique and mental training and everything else we do with the team, and get some boys to college. And that was the win. So yes, it wasn't the same season, and it was the toughest season. I mean, if there was a documentary on this year, that would be the title, hands down, the toughest year. We go on and we go forward and see what's going to happen down the line, and being a little bit more optimistic this year.
Maybe in a few years we'll put together that documentary. It'll be an off-season project for us. But you mentioned the exit interviews from last year, and it's weird how when time passes, you remember different things that you don't think that you remember. And I remember talking to you specifically after March 7th when you guys had beat the Junior Flyers in game 1 of your playoff series. I don't know if you remember this, but we didn't talk again until almost a month later because of the way that everything played out. Obviously, the Junior Flyers came back to win that series, but then you mentioned, the exit interviews, you had them right afterwards, and all of a sudden everyone's home and we're in lockdown. Now, the tough question that I want to ask you is, because of the way the season got canceled, was it almost easier that you guys were knocked out and you had the closure, or would you have preferred to still be playing and then being told your season is over?
I think we had the best opportunity or scenario possible.
Okay.
Because we played with no blip.
Yeah.
We just went, we were done. And then was it 3 days later, you called me and that was it. Yep. So, and we were already in exit meetings. In fact, I remember on that Wednesday, we had our Finnish player and our Russian player, we had to make reservations to get them out of the country within 2 days, and literally like they were gone. Yeah. So for us, it was definitely a positive. And while everyone was still scrambling, we were actually even started, signing guys, or not officially signing guys, but getting ready to nail it down. So we were steps ahead, because everyone else was still in holding patterns, like, oh, is this just going to blow over in a week or two? Will we be able to play? And so everyone was still in, like, anyone that was still in the playoffs was in that situation. That was a tough playoffs for us. We came against some really good goaltending from Sweden, who played, and the boy played on my friend's team up in Luleå in Sweden. So it was a little annoying, but it worked out for us, unfortunately.
But then you fast forward, and at the start of this season, I basically told people that the states of New Hampshire and Connecticut were the luckiest at the start of the year, because things were relatively wide open. So it was the Chiefs and the RoughRiders playing a bunch of games, and then the Wolves, Avalanche, and Spartans playing as many games as possible and having everyone come in as soon as possible. But then we go through this crazy transition where at one point, I think you played the Chiefs 7 times in a row or something like that. But that was the only team that you could play. How did you and Eric Lynn, the head coach, how did you guys go and talk to the team every day and try and get deliver that same motivation when you're playing the same opponent like that over and over and over again?
Yeah. So first of all, it's interesting how some other leagues, junior leagues, can operate, and meaning schedule wise, so there's some divisions and some other competitive leagues that play games over and over again. So, we always used to sort of joke, like, wow, that's got to be really hard to do. Like, you're playing the same teams 8, 9, 10 times a year, like, how does that work out, mentally? And we also thought too that those games, even though the schedule, was sort of recycled or redone multiple times, that it wasn't really going to be forever in our heads. So being optimistic in that sense, thinking that, all right, well, whatever it says, we're going to play them this many games, but we're probably not at the end of the day. It'll probably go back and we'll be fine. So what happens later on is that, and we know this happened internally from the league, that penalty minutes seemed to escalate a little bit more as the games progressed, and it was brought to attention to the league ownership and coaches, that we had to try to squash that. So, from our perspective, it can get heated, so the rivalries get extremely fierce. It's almost like a 7-game NHL playoff where it's going to get harder and harder. But we were trying to stay optimistic and tell the players basically, like, here's the opportunity. It could have been nothing, and now we have something. Just be glad that we're here every day, and and God's given us the ability to play hockey. You guys are lucky. They're teams that haven't even practiced this year. They're teams that aren't leagues that aren't even playing. They're young boys that'll never touch the ice this year, for whatever reason it is. And so every day that we step into this building, we're lucky. And so we rose, obviously we rose to the occasion, and it was tough, but we did make it through.
And then what was so strange, that last Chiefs matchup was on November 20th. So right before Thanksgiving. And then you can't play again because of the shutdown and COVID outbreak, all of that. You can't play again until the middle of January, but you still managed to finish, and you have to play 4 home games in Brewster. Was it simply day by day in the second half?
So what happened was, without throwing anyone under the bus on our team who had it first. So it ran through the team. Everyone got it, with the exception of 7. It was 7 players that didn't have it. The entire coaching staff had it. So that's 4 of us, and our gym trainer did not get it. Okay.
Yep.
So that was right before Thanksgiving, and it hit. Boom. So some guys had to spend Thanksgiving here. Some guys were able to go home based on whether they had COVID yet or not, or so on and so forth. And then, because the way COVID runs, it doesn't hit everyone right away. It sort of layered itself over the weeks. And by the time we looked at the calendar, we made a decision internally with the staff that we couldn't return probably till after Christmas, New Year's. And that because we wanted the players to be able to go home for the holidays. For us, it's important, that time of the year for everybody, especially during this crisis. So we ended up not coming back till the beginning of January. And then January, we end up having to play New Jersey, who was very, very strong this season again. And we had to play them 3 games in a row. Now, remember, from the training standpoint and the physicality of a human being, if you're losing 7 weeks, your whole summer training and your maintenance that you've had all year is completely gone. You'll lose strength training in 5 to 6 weeks. It'll all be gone basically. And cardio is gone in 3 to 4 weeks. So only a few players were able to get back after COVID and train, or had ice time and had home gyms or whatever. Remember, we're in the middle of the winter too. It's not like guys can go outside and do some workout.
No.
So we had to, in Swedish, they say börja från början, which means to start from the beginning. We had to start from the beginning.
Yep.
And it was hard. And then we ran into February, where we basically had to play 1/3 of our season in 1 month. Then we knew we were going to have injuries. And fast forward to playoffs, which was a day break, and then we had to go down to Maryland. By the final game, we had 5 players injured, and 2 players had to sit for a game for penalties. So it was awfully tough, but we did make the run, and guys are going to school. Will Pond just called me from our team on Friday, and he's going to Western New England. Which I haven't sent you the email yet.
There you go.
That's the Monday morning thing. But yes, so, guys are going, and we're excited. And like I said, the toughest season, but definitely some apples in there.
So that covers, we'll say, the 2020-21 season. Obviously, the fact that we finished is the biggest positive that you guys can see as a staff. But I want to talk more about the history of the program. And I know the answer to this question, but I want the public to hear it. A few years ago, you guys changed from the Oilers to the RoughRiders. Can you talk about what that name change entailed for you and becoming a part of the big RoughRiders organization?
Sure. Well, we've always been part of the RoughRiders organization. So the RoughRiders were founded in 1999 by Tony Cedeo. Tony owns our USHL team, of course, out in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and we have teams there from youth all the way through high school, 14s, and then a high school team. In fact, Ethan Kachanu plays on our team as a forward last year, his first year, and he'll return next year, is from Cedar Rapids High School, who actually wear the same uniforms as we do.
Yeah.
And then we have our facility out in Colorado, in Superior, outside of Denver. Tony and his staff built an unbelievable complex. I think it was close to $60 million, which has 2 rinks and 3-on-3 rink, an indoor soccer field, basketball courts. They even do esports now. They're in baseball. And so it's a European model with a lot of different types of sports. And then when they opened the rink in Sono, Eric, had met Tony and our past ownership. So we had a different rink owner then. And we put together this junior team and an organization under it. So even though we were wearing Oilers was the name, and the name comes from a pro team that played out of Crystal Ice Arena here in Norwalk back in the day. So I'm going to say then it was equivalent to like a little bit, maybe like a so-called AHL back there in the 60s and 70s. So they were called the Home Oilers. And so that they used that name, but it was always part of the RoughRiders brand. We were, if you looked at our uniforms back then, same colors. Actually, our logo was exactly the same as the RoughRiders logo, our circle logo. It just said Connecticut Oilers on it.
Yeah.
And then what happened was the league was looking for some expansion there we were trying to get another team in Connecticut. And so our past owner, Ryan Hughes, was working with the league, and we helped put in the Oilers. But we also, at the same time, maybe when that was happening, there was a move to push our name to RoughRiders, because when they built the Colorado build out and they were trying to expand a little bit more to get the name more present, we wanted to change it to our top team's name and to be in synergy with our USHL team. So that all happened during that time. So when the Oilers, when we changed our name, since they had built the Oilers brand, our past owner decided to keep the name of the team and just transition it over. And between you and I, it was extremely confusing. We voiced our opinion, but it wasn't heard. And I remember in our first game, one of our first games, we were up like at Apple Core, and an official came over me and asked me, "Can you explain? I just don't get it. Like, are you?" And we would get phone calls from parents and players, and we actually lost players during the recruiting process because of it too. So it was a really odd little 6-month period of time. So the Chiefs now, I guess, right, officially are coming from that mold.
Yep.
And we are not a new team. We've never changed our team. The name was just basically sold and moved on, and we just took a new name on. That's really all it is, but very confusing to the community.
Yes, sure. but obviously what people notice now is that the consistent aspect of it is you guys have always been, as you like to say, the best way to college hockey. So just to go over the Division III numbers over 8 seasons in this league, in terms of commitments for 8 seasons, 9, 7, 7, 13, 11, 7, 8, and I guess now it's actually 5. We just had breaking news on this podcast.
Yes.
But you guys have always been consistently, you could always pencil you guys in for, somewhere around the 8 number for just Division III commitments. Yeah. What makes you guys so consistent in that area?
Our big thing is the players first. So when a player comes to us in the recruiting process, and this might sound odd to some of the other coaches that'll be listening, the championship is irrelevant.
Yep. Compared
to the player's placement to university.
Yep.
So that's the sacrifice. For example, if I'm interviewing a player, I will say to him, when you come to us, you are our number one priority. we will try to win as many games as we can as a team, and we will try to advance as far as we can into the Frozen Four. But we need to get you to division hockey, meaning Division 1, 2, or 3.
Yep.
And that for us is number one. And by doing that, there's sacrifices that are made, which means that we have to make sure that we're getting everybody in. We keep very low roster numbers. You know that. We are definitely have the least amount of movement per year on average per team by far.
Yep.
I don't want to start comparing other numbers because you guys are going to get mad, but we try to balance our roster with this year it'll be with 00s, 01s, 01s, 02s, 03s, and even we're bringing in an 04 from England this year, who's been playing in Canada for a couple of years. So, which we try to balance the roster. We want to make sure that the player that's coming into us is there because they want to continue to get better in development and rather bring in a younger player than for this year bringing in 01, where I've had tons of 01s in all three positions reach out to us, but we don't feel we have enough time on about what we're seeing in their gameplay to develop them the way that Eric and I want to do from a technical standpoint.
Yep. And it's not just Division 3 placement. You guys are one of the programs that has the highest number of Division 1 commitments over the years. There's been 15 of them that have come through the RoughRiders program. Some of them have come in and then played another year elsewhere. So when you get some of those younger players that have those aspirations of maybe trying to climb the USA Hockey ladder of development, how do those meetings go?
You're talking about players going to D1 and So it's interesting because in most cases, people in hockey would say, well, if a player is a D1 capable player, why wouldn't they play in Tier 1? Why wouldn't they go to your USHL team?
Yeah.
And of course, yes, that's always an option, but the idea is that the player, when they set the track to where they want to go, there are players that will bring all the way through the process, like Alex Wilkinson, who went to Army.
Yeah.
So Alex with us for 3 seasons, and he did not, in the beginning, did not start the same way he finished. So it took him time to grow. He's a fantastic, beautiful skater. And his game just increased. And it was, I'm going to say October, November of his last year where that D1 was, you could smell it a little bit more after every game. There are other players that are with us like McAvoy, for example, who ended up at Colgate. He'll be with us. And then we're like, all right, you need to move on to a different league he went to the VCHL to try to step it up another level. So every player has a different path. And the nice thing about the EHL being in USA Hockey and sort of the development ladder is that, and I don't know if a lot of people know this, but it's in players' contracts that players have rights. Players have rights to move, and it's our job to move them on. I always tell players in recruiting that, yes, if you, like a young player, like our 04 from England, well, if I get good enough, like what would be the next step? I said, I will drive. I always say, I will drive you to the airport. We want them to get better. We were not here, not telling anyone, that this player got better, so let's just keep them here. And you'll just end up going to D1 through us. No, there's a different way to go. Our big, obviously the EHL has done a fantastic job on feeding players into NCAA hockey. Our forte now is obviously Division 3 and 2.
Yeah.
And across the league, we do have Division 1 players come through. Great players. I remember when the Revolution were in the league and we had to play a game down in Philly and Caden Primo's in that. That boy scared the living daylights out of our team back then, and with his dad on the bench too, coaching.
Yeah.
And so there's some really some great players that have gone through through great universities. But, on the other hand too, we have fantastic players going to D3 and D2,
Yep.
Absolutely fantastic players. And a lot of players that finish their careers, and we help them out. We always say the slogan across all Rough Riders teams is once a Rough Rider, always a Rough Rider.
Yep.
That we will help them their transition after sport. Like Ludwig Steenberg, for example, is played for us and then went to Plymouth for 4 years, and now is playing. He played hockey in Norway for 2 years on pro level, and now he's playing in Sweden this year.
Yep.
So we have guys down in the East Coast and the Southern League too. So they're guys that are around, and that's for us. That's developing, being the best you can be, and seeing where you end up. Yeah. That's the fun part.
And you mentioned Wilkinson in there. I wanted to mention his name because he's a perfect example of a player who went to Division I from this league. But then you also had a couple Division III players. There's so many commitments that you guys are proud of, I'm sure. But the ones that really stand out to me, if we're talking true Division III, are Walker Harris and Todd Jackson. And you see what Walker's done or did at Wesley, and then Todd moving on to Norwich. How often do you find yourself telling their success stories when you're recruiting new players?
A tremendous amount of time. It's they're definitely staples in the recruiting process. We always tell players, that we're recruiting. Of course, if you want any phone numbers to talk to any guys about their experience. Walker was just an unbelievable force, both with us and at Wesleyan. He was an SCAC Rookie of the Year as well. He started out with our Rough Riders team out in Colorado in the Western States, played under Paul DuPoit. And Paul called us up and said, Walker wants to take the next step up, and we took him in, and such a gentleman, great guy, and he ends up going to a fantastic university and getting absolutely great education. And these players too were looking to take the next step in Europe and so on, and maybe leagues here in the States, but COVID put a squash on tons of players.
Yep.
Even Timmy Sestak, who didn't play for us, and his mom works at our rink, and we see Timmy all the time. They actually live 2 blocks away from me. Timmy was slated to go to play in Europe too, and he was at Wesleyan with Walker. And because of the whole COVID, he's had to turn the corner, and he wants to be a doctor, and that's what he's doing now. And that dream was sort of squashed. And there's another another player who played in the EHL, who had an unbelievable career. He was on some weaker teams a little bit in the league, but was definitely a standout. Coach Sorella will maybe remember this. They were up at Applecore for a showcase. I was sitting next to Alex Kovalev upstairs watching the game because his son was playing in a youth hockey game there, and he was watching the game for a little bit. And Timmy was standing there on his head in a showcase game, and they ended up losing, I think, Chris's team in overtime. But I turned to Kovalev, and I remember saying to him, I said, this guy is this goalie is really good, really, really good. And, you just watch him through the year, and, he ends up going to school. So it was great, and then Wilkinson, on the other hand, coming out of North Carolina. We've had some really great players from North Carolina. And, you're just talking about Todd Jackson too. Jackson's also out of that North Carolina pedigree. An extremely fast player, just like lightning fast, and ends up going to Norwich, and they win their first year, and he scores the goal to give them the D3 championship. That's what it's about at the end of the day. Yep. It's where you put these players, and that's why we're here. It's junior hockey. It's not pro hockey. It's different. When I coach pro hockey in Europe, it's a different type of animal.
Yeah.
And people always ask, Brownie, why are you coaching juniors, as opposed to pro someplace, or why do you come back, or so on and so forth. And the only other year before this, so next year will be basically my 10th year with Eric, but I coached AIK Stockholm's junior team in 1986. It was when I went to Europe after college. So it was my first opportunity in Europe.
Yep.
And so USA Hockey, I'll just segue to a little story here because
that's good.
People can listen to the podcast in their car. USA Hockey was looking to place a couple of coaches into Sweden back in the mid 80s. The reason was there were so many Europeans coming to the NHL that they wanted to know what was going on. So I had gone out to Colorado Springs to the USA Hockey Symposium then. There was no level 5 back then, masters. So you had high level coaches from all the countries. And I was friends with Ted Sater, who was coaching the New York Rangers at the time. And Teddy invited me out to this, to the symposium. And I was just out of college. I can't remember how old I was, 21, 22 years old. And I'm rooming with Paul Holmgren, Mike Keenan's there. I remember I was sitting for breakfast the first morning, and this guy taps me on the shoulder and he asked me if I can sit down, and it's Bob Johnson, like a completely different era. So they asked me if I want to go to coach in Sweden. And I said, sure. And I was slated, and I studied communication and communication design in school, and I was already working in an advertising place in the city, in New York City. And I was coaching too, I was coaching an assistant coach at Columbia University then for 3 years during college. So I started very early coaching. And I said, sure, why not? My parents, said, drove me to the airport, and, there it was, boom. And so I coached AIK juniors that year, and we ended up finishing 3rd place in the Swedish championships. And in retrospect, it is the most fun I have ever had coaching that age group, because I had coached prep school, and I have coached at NYU when they were at ACHA back then. But that age group seemed to be the best because they were the hungriest to learn.
Yep.
And when Eric gave me this opportunity, I didn't really think it was going to be for that long. I had taken a hiatus for 2 years from the bench and was just scouting for a team in Sweden and Timrå, where I used to work. And I took a team to go back from Wilkes-Barre for the Pee Wee tournament for 2 years. And they built this rink in Norwalk. I live in Norwalk. I mean, Eric's like, come on, it's 12 minutes from your house. Try it out. And so now I'm here. But it's great. And Eric and I have such a synergy. In the beginning, it was definitely I loved what he was doing. He thinks way out of the box. He's very progressive. He's one of the best skaters I've ever seen in my life. And it's a big piece for our players coming in to have such a great skating coach. But we don't even have to talk. It's almost like with my brothers, we just think, look at each other and just smile because we know. So and like for us, like I'm saying, it's the commitments every year and helping the boys on and off the ice, whether it's an ice hockey problem or a personal problem, or last year with COVID, there was so much going on. That's what it is, just giving back, and it's very rewarding.
And I know Brittany mentioned this in her Brits Commits with Tyler. I'm not sure if you know this because you brought up your connection with Eric. There are coaches in this league that have coached as long in the league as you guys have, but you're the only duo that's been together the entire time in the same place the entire time. And it sounds like it's not going anywhere anytime soon. Is there ever a moment that you do butt heads, or like you said, you don't really have to even speak that much? You're always on the same wavelengths.
I mean, it's always tough, being I'm an associate, head coach, but it's, basically I'm under Eric, right? So He has the last word on everything, and he definitely is very polite and will always ask an opinion about things. And sometimes, I'll make a mistake, or he'll make a mistake on personality we could have on the ice, or or maybe we shouldn't have practiced that long that day, or whatever, whatever the reasoning is. But I mean, we've never gotten in a shouting match in 10 years. I might be shouting at him about something that I'm upset about, with something that's out of our control. But as far as we're concerned, it's very professional. The same we would do with players as well. So we're very level, and we've been educating ourselves too on the change in the environment in society and hockey over the last 10 years, because the team that we had when we started, there were teams that we had when we started, and now are completely different. As far, and you speak to tons of coaches. It's not the same hockey player. It's different style. The game's different. And that's due to society, where everyone feels a sort of sense of entitlement to back then in the day there was a harder work ethic. To get things. I was just telling you before we started the podcast that I had a great opportunity yesterday to coach a spring 2017 with some of the best players in the country, coming in from Chicago Mission and Pittsburgh Penguin Elite. And we ended up winning this tournament yesterday, and it was right here at Sono in Norwalk, and it was fantastic. And it's so at the end in these tournaments, traditionally, like, every team gets trophies, type of scenario. Well, no, this wasn't the case. Only the winning team got trophies. So things like that. That's those are societal changes. That's great for me to see, but not everyone's there's not 50 boxes at the rink of trophies for everybody that doesn't finish in first. But society's changed, and you've had to adapt, and we've had to do a lot of off-season education. We've had to read a lot of books. We've talked to a lot of professionals, and that helps our relationship as well. So it's very solid.
And this is our 4th Team of the Week feature, where you're actually one of 3 what I call original 6 teams that we featured so far, with the Rangers and Little Flyers being the other 2. And before I bring the E crew in, we're obviously going to come up with the all-time RoughRiders lineup, forwards, D, and goalie. Can you just give us 1 forward and 1 D? I know there's going to be names that you don't say, but we'll probably cover them anyways. But give us the 1 forward and 1 D that we should start our lineup with for the all-time RoughRiders.
Well, I mean, it's going to go back to the players we're talking about. So obviously Walker Harris it definitely needs to be there in that spot. And then Alex Wilkinson on defense. And the reason being is that both of these guys will walk through the wall for anybody. Unbelievable work ethic. They are smart kids, book wise. And they put in the time on ice and off ice. I mean, I know Wilkie put in a tremendous amount of work off the ice. When he went back to Carolina for the summers. I know when I went to go visit out in Colorado to our RoughRiders facility, Walker Harris was working there for the summers, so he could have full access to the gyms and stuff and the ice. And they are the prototypical ice hockey player. If you had to go to the store and buy one, that would be the one you would want to buy in both positions. So yeah, 100%, those 2 boys.
So that's how we'll start it. I'm going to let you jump off so the E crew can come on. I appreciate you coming back on the podcast, and enjoy the rest of the off season.
Thanks again, Neil. And once again, thank you for the EHL for putting together the toughest, but the most rewardable season in some respects at the end of the day.
Thanks again to Stephen Brown for coming on the podcast this week and helping us get the all-time RoughRiders lineup started. So let's bring in the E crew now, and Jeff and Brittany. I made it 35 or so plus minutes on a RoughRiders podcast, and I have not used the word hosses yet.
Oh, well, let's get it going, baby.
We're here.
You just said it once. Now it's time for me and Britt. Let's go hosses.
Well, because we talked about the transition from the Oilers to RoughRiders name, and I should have probably said, can we now talk about the transition from the RoughRiders to Hosses name?
When will you guys be changing that, Mr. Eric Lind and Steve Brown?
Yeah, so obviously, for those who haven't heard it yet, I mean, if you haven't heard Brittany say hosses yet, then I don't know if you've been around the league. Hosses, it means horses, which of course the Rough Riders logo is a horse.
It's a hoss.
It's
not a horse, it's a hoss.
It's a hoss. So that's why we sometimes jokingly call them the hosses. But so many good players over the years. Obviously, with this being our 4th Team of the Week feature, 3 of them so far, including the Rough Riders, are part of the original 6. Wizards almost by a year were part of the original 6. But that gives us 8 years to break down. The 2 names that Brownie gave us, I think we all had anyways. Walker Harris was a Colorado kid who went to play, I have to say it, hockey and golf at Wesleyan. He was a dual sport.
Gotta get the golf in.
You know what? There's a lot of kids on Wesleyan's hockey team who are on the golf team.
Yes.
Like to this present day.
Yes. And hey, golf is a great sport. That's all I have
do you follow any of the
phenomenal
Wesleyan kids on Instagram? Like on the we have to
the
on the
league
EHL
account,
Instagram.
yes.
Yeah, but they literally in the spring have like golf tournaments via Instagram story, and it's really funny.
And obviously, as Brownie
still
pointed
haven't golfed
out,
yet this year. I'm upset.
we'll change that.
It's still early. Neil.
But like for a kid like Walker Harris, you have the golf, you have the hockey, and you have the academics of Wesleyan also. So like you got it all going for you there at Wesleyan. And then Alex Wilkinson, I know Jeff, you've seen him play a lot when you're at Bentley games because he's a defenseman at Army. I think he won Defenseman of the Year his sophomore year or something like that also. And he's one of those kids that went D1 from the EHL. So an even extra, stick tap to him for that. Not to say that we don't have Division I talent, but often you see the kids climb the ladder in a different direction to get to that Division I level. So obviously 2 players that I think we would have had regardless. But that's a good foundation to start with. And why don't we make it 3 for 3? Because I think it's almost locked in. The next guy has to be Michael Tilford in goal.
Absolutely.
Second most wins all time in EHL history with 45.
Look at the names he's above too. Egbert, Gerard.
Studs.
Thomas Walker.
Oh, that's a lot of names. Thomas Walker. Hey, how are you? We love you, Tommy.
Tilford was a 2-year guy with the Rough Riders, then went on to play 4 years at Nazareth, where we also had another goalie recently commit over the weekend as well. So a school that's always been consistently, you could say, on our goaltenders. So Michael Tilford gives us a foundational piece at each spot. So I'm going to go next, and I wanted to kind of test you guys because to me, it's obvious who I have to include in this. But I don't know if you guys know as much of the history of this player.
Is it a defenseman?
It's a forward, and I have to pick him because of his Quinnipiac connection.
Is it Will Christensen?
So Nick Germain, if you want to talk about the route to Division I, Nick Germain was from Connecticut. This is where it gets so unique, and like we could have a totally separate podcast on this. Like he is like literally from near Quinnipiac, went and played for the Oilers for a couple of years, for a little over a year.
School kid,
and then had to go up. He had to go all the way out to the BCHL and then come back to play at Quinnipiac, which is that just makes the Division I like journey like so unique to me. Like, it's a totally different podcast, right? You have to be willing to do something like that, but obviously,
the BCHL too.
Yeah,
per game player, not bad.
Me being a Quinnipiac guy, I have to include the captain of Quinnipiac. Like I have to.
Oh, Bobcats! We'll get the mascots right this week.
Yeah.
Test of college mascots for everyone at home. What is Quinnipiac's mascot? I'll tell you what. It's not a shark. It's not a dolphin. It's a bobcat.
There we go. Lock it in.
I did have a few. I did have a few texts that said, "Guys, that was pretty funny last week."
Au natural. That's us. Au natural.
So other forwards that jumped out to you guys?
Joe Widmar.
Yeah, that's a way back. That's a streak
website. You're going first.
I'm going point streak. I am.
He
played for UMass, so like he probably should be on that.
Yes. Yeah, Widmar was good.
So I pointed out
Pims guy too, Widmar. Not afraid
to. Big Pims
not afraid to beat you up. Well, you know, he had 128 and 40 games back in.
Oh yeah.
14. You know,
see, UMass Des Moines is that good?
So
he's not afraid to whack you if you get in his face. Chicago Steel guy too, Brett.
Oh, death up.
He's part of that. He was part of that 15-player class of Division I commitments that have played for the RoughRiders. Of course, he, as Brittany and Jeff just mentioned, climbed the ladder within USA Hockey up to the USHL and then on to UMass from there. So that gives us 3 forwards so far.
Are we allowed to go either position, Neil? We're kind of just hopping around forward D goalie this week?
I think we're starting it. I think we'll start forwards right now because they have had so many good scorers of the years. I think you have to put the leading.
I see another name.
I was going to go leading scorer next. I think leading scorer 3-year
Alex Ruella,
veteran there.
Oh yeah,
Ruella, who moved on to Manhattanville, was just steady. And obviously, you can see all the letters that pop up on his EP page. Like he was a true leader as well for that team.
I loves to rally the boys.
Yes,
it appears good team guy.
And what's so fun to watch is through that EHL Instagram, you see these players become friends with guys who they didn't know before. So I actually noticed earlier this offseason, a lot of Alex Ruella and Mason Emoff together. Emoff, of course, played for the Lumberjacks, but now they're at Manhattanville together.
I love seeing that stuff. It's comical. Yeah. And it's also comical when oh, your team's had beef. Not the RoughRiders in Vermont, but there are other Vermont and BJR. You have Descanio and Billy Gerard are BFFs, and I'm oh,
that's weird.
And what?
And we're going off topic here for a second, but Brittany, I'll test your knowledge. I forget this, but you bring up an interesting point because I remember there was a championship game
where I became friends with this kid's dad.
Tyler Yurovich was best friends with somebody.
But Tino.
Okay,
Alundy.
that's what it was.
Tino
on the Revolution, and they faced up in that. So I always wonder how I guess I don't have any of these myself, but how far down the road can you bring up, hey, I have bragging rights over you? You know what I mean? Yep. We won that game and you didn't.
Yeah, Tyler was friends with a bunch of those Rev kids because a lot of the Rev kids were PA kids, and Tyler was from PA.
We're gonna have that this year. Look at the Avalanche Rangers Championship, right? Right jumps out to me. You have Rodrigue and Chris Aarons going to Brockport, right? So we'll see when they bring that one up. Different podcast though, again, as well. Keeping with the forwards though, I know this name has been mentioned on a podcast before, based off the season where he
Bella.
I was gonna say, when are we getting the boys in? The brothers.
Goals. Well, we'll start with Andrew.
Do we get one
Bella
in, or do we get both in? Okay,
I think we have to start with Andrew Bella first and foremost, for sure. Another Manhattanville kid. So there's a good pipeline that's gone from the RoughRiders to Manhattanville over the years. We just named 2 in a row: Ruella and Bella. Kind of rhymes there, actually.
Ruella Bella. Bella to Ruella.
A third name, or another name that got brought up during my interview with Brownie, was Todd Jackson.
No, that was going to be my person. I was going to say.
Well, do you you haven't heard the interview because I just recorded it, but do you know the interesting stat about what Jackson did in this first season at Norwich?
No.
As a freshman, he scored the game-winning goal in the national championship game.
Ew.
So it's one of those where I think this is the type of player that we can sell and promote from our league the most. We never hold kids back from going to the Division I level, and he probably could be a Division I player. But
throw him in the transfer portal with half the country.
Oh my God, everybody's going everywhere. Kind of exciting, kind of nerve-wracking.
But the point is, what do you want to be when you get to college? Do you want to score the game-winning goal in the national championship game and play such a big part in what Norwich is? Or do you want to be a guy that may be grinding things out for the third or fourth line? You have to, it's that look in the mirror type conversation that you have to have with yourself. And I'm sure he could have been a Division I guy. I'm sure Walker Harris could have been a Division I guy. I mean, we know Alex Wilkinson was, and he immediately became an instant part of the top 4 on the back end for Army.
We've talked about that during the regular season, right? On the podcast. I mean, there's only 60 Division I college hockey teams. That's it in the entire country. So there is plenty of guys, you're right, Neil, at Division II and Division III that could play D1.
Yeah.
And that's why you see these powerhouses, the Norwiches, the UMass Bostons with, and who was it we talked about that went from UMass Boston to, I believe, Long Island University?
Oh, yeah.
We talked to him earlier this year.
Bross, yeah.
Bross, that's right. Yeah. So,
and hey, I don't know if I'll have Joe Britannia on again this summer, but even Joe pointed out, because Joe's seen it, like he thinks that I thought it already myself. I know a lot of people in our league do think this, but he saw Division I, and now he's seeing our league and obviously then move on to Division III. He doesn't think the gap is that big.
No,
it's what you just said though. There's 30 less teams, so there's players that could be playing Division I. There's just not a spot for it.
Yep.
Right.
So another forward, as I keep stealing them, you guys should say something because I keep stealing the forwards.
Oh, how about Will Christensen? He's another one that I saw from the Wayback Machine. Wow, is he third?
Well, no, Will Christensen was like around in my time, so it wasn't that long ago.
Well, it feels like way ago.
Well, 2019,
2020, dude.
It does feel like a while.
It feels like forever ago.
That was
not have been.
That was like the beginning of the pandemic. So
yeah, dude. I was just gonna say, Brittany, do you realize what we've been through the last year? It feels like this traveled through 10 years in the last 1 year.
He was part of I want to say, 3-player class from that 2019-20 team that went to St. A's.
Are you thinking? I think
that there were 3 different players on that same RoughRiders team that went to St. A's.
Right. Well,
so it was Christensen, Tommy Schwartz, and Connor Snowdy, all in the same year.
Right.
Snowdy.
Yeah, there's a D coming soon. I won't say that name yet.
Oh my gosh!
I already know who you're gonna say.
King.
Is he on that team? Because if he is, I know who you're already gonna say.
Yes.
Yes.
Neil's best friend.
Oh, he was
my best friend.
He was.
We'll get to story
Brittany's
time.
best friend.
Yes. What does that give us for forwards so far? So far, that
I
gives
want Connor Boyce on the list.
Yeah.
Speaking of Mville.
Well, we'll put him there.
Oh shoot! I forgot he was a D. Sorry, whoops.
You did that with Luke Pepin last week, so we're good.
Yeah, true.
Hey, it happens.
But sticking with the forwards to finish off there.
Sorry, Colin Kane.
Colin Kane. Is that because of his skill or because his cousin is Patrick Kane?
I think because his cousin is Patrick Kane, he gets to go on anyways.
I thought he played multiple years. He was only a 1-year guy, huh?
No, only a 1-year guy, and
I swore he was multiple years. When I saw his name, I was like, Colin Kane, and I'm like, he only played 1 year. Heck of a year, though.
He was part of. That was the first team that faced college teams, if I remember correctly.
When he was on the All-Star team?
Yes, the All-Star team. I think 17-18 was the first year that we did that. I mean,
it was because he was on it, and I remember I was like, I actually realized like who his cousin was, and I was like, oh,
like Kane.
I was like, well, there's a billion.
There's a lot of Kanes.
I went to high school with people whose last name was Kane, and I can tell you they were not related to the king, the goat.
And the funniest thing, Jeff, that whole All-Star week, Brittany's phone case was like Chicago Blackhawks, and like her background is like Patrick Kane, and it like. She's probably like hiding her phone. She's like, should Cullen see this or like not? Like
he's like, hey Britt, you're like, what? Stop looking over my shoulder.
Literally, get away. That was the year that Chris Peters was at the All-Star game, so literally it was like attached to the hip. I was like, okay, it's me and you. We're taking this whole thing. And meanwhile, like Octi was there, Savell was there. Like it was a unit. That team was low-key good.
The oil hosses is what I guess we have to call them, right? The oil hosses, the oil rough riding hosses. They had another.
I had this man too. He's a man. Look at him. He looks like he's 37. He's my age.
But they had another NHL lineage guy. Was Zuccarello, Matt Zuccarello's younger brother, Fabian.
Yes.
I know he probably won't make the list, but I'm just going back on the NHL.
I'm trying to remember what year that was. Like
so they had Pakian's cousin and then Matt Zuccarello's younger brother.
Just blend together. But yes, I for those that don't know, I guess they haven't picked up on it yet. I obviously share my screen during this. So I have Ludwig Steenberg pulled up, who Brownie mentioned went on to play at Plymouth State and is now playing professional hockey in Sweden.
I was going to say that looks like a Sweden.
And he does, with his picture that we're looking at together, he does look like a grown man while being basically Brittany's age.
He's 26.
Yeah, literally. He 94. He's a year older than me.
Yes.
But still, sheesh, look at him.
Well,
I'd be scared of him.
That's some sick jerseys. What team is he playing for?
Why did that paste with white font?
Oh, hello.
So that gets us down to the final three forwards.
Oh, fix that. That's making me angry.
He's bolded.
I'm going to fix it. For the final three forwards, there's been so many good ones over the years.
Brett Mochaccino, a.k.a. Brett Mochia. I used to call him
Mochaccino.
Yes, that's what she used to call him.
I can see that. Makes sense.
He's not going on the list though, but like just
we still have the youngest Bella. We've called.
Yeah, we have the youngest Bella. We have Bonapane from this season. We haven't even touched on this season yet.
I think Colin should probably go on the list.
We want to do the Bellas together.
Yeah, that's so cute.
Yeah. Actually, yeah, we should. We should do Andrew Bella / Colin Bella. I like that.
Yeah, maybe they should just count as one.
Maybe.
It can be interchangeable.
Or here you go.
They might have something to gripe about.
Wait, put Colin Bella down in our FD blah blah.
Our utility.
Oh, yes.
There you go. Justin just got really happy with us for using the utility well.
Cool.
Here we go. Great kid.
I think then at that point, I do want to include Bonapane from this past year.
He was great.
We've touched on different changes of scenery before, and not to say that Valley was the wrong spot for Bonapane, but when he got to the RoughRiders, for some reason, his point totals just doubled. So sometimes just something different, a different spot in the lineup, something clicks for you.
Different system.
And honestly, I have to say, one of the best interviews for Brittany on Brit's Commits. Like, what an awesome kid.
Yeah, nice kid. Oh, God. The behind the scenes of that one was so funny. The whole team was watching this whole interview go down. It's like he's right here, obviously in front of the camera. Whole team is behind the computer.
Brittany has that effect, as we all remember from the Frozen Finals with Mr. Friedman from the Lumberjacks and the 900 Vermont Lumberjacks all sitting there on their phone interviewing at the same time. Maybe making.
Yeah, I think what made the kid.
Brittany has that effect.
I think what made that kid so nervous was the fact that he is an infant.
Like 2.
Basically.
Yeah.
And probably the first time that he was being interviewed. But
I had somebody else whose name I can see right now. I had Mitchell Parsons.
Mitchell Parsons was a fun player in this league, immediately made an impact at the college level too. I want to say he got to the SUNYAC and then won a couple week awards right away too. And a player that played in a different tier 3 junior hockey league before he came to our league, and kept producing. He was with the North Iowa Bulls for 2 years, who of course recently won the NA3 championship. Totally different story for another day, but obviously Rich DiCaprio texted me over the weekend saying, "When do we get to play North Iowa?" I was like, I don't know, man. I don't know, but it would be fun. It would be fun.
Cross leagues.
Wait, you know who I always see together via social media? Another one, Mitchell Parsons and Trevor Bray.
There's a RoughRiders Express connection, and there was one year, it may have even been against each other, where there was a couple games late in the year, and Brownie touched on this when we were talking about all the times.
33 goals, Mitchell Parsons. Yuck.
we were talking about all the times that the Chiefs and RoughRiders played each other this year, and obviously there was like a hatred brewed between the two teams. I don't know what year it was, but there was one random year where the Express played the RoughRiders for the first time ever and just killed each other. And like we were trying to figure out why, and like there was
I've
like
never met you, but I hate
like,
you.
Like there was like nothing. They had never played each other, but now they're best friends in college, so it's all good.
It's kind of like when you leave high school and all of a sudden you start hanging out with people that you're like, oh, we never hung out in high school, but then in college all of a sudden you're like, yeah, let's be friends. Like,
yeah,
you just grow up and you move on, you get out of cliques and stuff.
So that brings us down to one forward left, and there's just so many good forwards to look up and down the list. I'm totally torn here. I know it could be Nick Kukuris or an Isazuka. Obviously, I mentioned Tommy Schwartz's name earlier. I think I know where I want to go with this.
God, you're going far down here.
Well,
oh my God, this kid, speaking of everybody being friends on freaking social media. Oh, do you know where I'm going with that?
Yes, I know exactly where you're going with that. And
God.
Brett Backman, he's further down the list because he only played 1 year with the Hussles. He had 40 points in 45 games, went on to Plymouth State, and Jeff, like,
where he is best friends
with Mike McPherson. Like, it is like brother and brother.
Ranger.
And like nothing makes me laugh more than when the players post about how like the first 100 fans get this at the next game. And like these
do it all the time.
Like these two get like they post I can't even repeat some of it sometimes, but it's like signed
explicit content,
signed picture of Mike McPherson's face at the next game. It's like, is that really what people want when they walk in the door?
Like, hey, here's a fathead of me. Like,
but like it's so funny, and obviously they're very close there. Backman, as I mentioned, played just 1 season with the Rough Riders. Kind of cool at the time because his dad played in the NHL, and I know there's a huge connection between the father and Eric Lind, and that's kind of how he ended up with the Rough Riders. I mean, I'm surprised Brittany hasn't even said this yet. Did you miss the prep school that he played at?
No, I saw that he played at Avon.
Okay.
I'm not the biggest Avon gal.
I mean,
loves prep school, but Avon, forget it. No,
come on, you can't follow the crowd. I'm more of a Salisbury person.
They're the sexy one.
You can't be a Salisbury and an Avon person. Don't worry.
Oh, it's one or the other.
You cannot be both.
Duly noted. Okay.
Bruins Canadians thing. You got to choose one side.
You can't be an Avon and Salisbury.
I guess we go to the D now.
All right. On to the D.
All right. So speaking of prep school, Connor Boyce, #Winch Guy. That's what the Winchenden people.
Get up.
Whoever runs the Winchenden Twitter account always hashtags Winch Guy, and it's really funny. And I always laugh at it.
It is a
Winchenden Prep School. I used to go there for high school football. We'd stay there for training camp. Fun fact.
Yep. So Connor Boyce, Winch Guy.
So we have Wilkinson and Boyce so far.
You gotta get excited for Mr. Happy.
We gotta put 2 defensemen of the year in. You have Mark Happy in 1, and then you have Gray Owens as
freaking Owens.
Neil's best buddy, Gray Owens.
Dude, Gray Owens is my best buddy.
Okay, sorry,
he was my best friend. He was my best friend on fantasy. But when Brittany went out and emphasized how the Rough Riders were going to lose in the playoffs, and Owens
to the junior Flyers,
the bulletin board material. Brittany Hart says we will lose.
And Brittany was actually right. Let's not leave that part out. She actually was right, but he tagged her.
I'm gonna go find it.
He tagged her in the post, right? Which, like, when all is said and done, like when every season ends, people ask me, like, what are you looking to do the most? And it's just create buzz, right?
There
it is.
That's what we did. We create people talking about it. That's all we're trying to do. And it made it that much more exciting. And he just tags Brittany in the post.
It is ride or die, #playoffs, tags me in the picture.
And like, I think she texted me right away. A common text that I don't think you've gotten yet, Jeff. We weren't even talking that day, but when Brittany has something to tell me, she texts me in all caps, pause. So like, pause whatever you're doing and listen to what I'm about to just say.
Pause.
Like pause. Go look at Gray Owens' post. Okay, I'll go look. It's right there, tagged in it.
We've seen a few pauses in the. It sounds familiar in our group chat.
It's either pause or question.
Question. I was gonna say
God, my least
that's
favorite
another. We can do a whole
text.
episode on that one. That was a good conversation.
So that gives us 4D so far.
Dude, look, we
only have 2 more. Sheesh.
Mark Happy was good, yuck, gross. Like the points that kid put up, triple-digit points, and
Look at another Flint State guy.
He was an oil. He was leaking oil. He wasn't leaking oil. He was
3 years with the Oilers, obviously. As we know,
I forgot he was a defenseman.
Like 123 points. Like
that is stupid.
Like always jumped up in the play and could finish with the best.
Wasn't he?
I
think I remember.
There you go. EP tells you everything these days.
Left
shot right there. I remember he is honestly one of the first players I ever saw in this league. Because
he was right when you came in.
Yeah, so because in the 2014-15 season, Mark took me to a game, Mark Kumpel. And I was like,
Mark Happy did not take you to a game himself.
And Mark Kumpel took you to a game to see Mark Happy.
Correct.
And definitely Mark with a K, Mark with a C.
It was actually the first ever EHL game I saw was Oilers, RoughRiders, versus Rangers at the Bic.
Ooh, breakaway ice center.
And Mike Robinson was in net for the Rangers.
UNH Wildcat.
Yeah, I remember seeing Happy. I was like, oh, his name's Happy. Oh, he scored. Oh, he scored again.
This kid's really happy. This happy kid.
It's pretty good. So it was cool. I mean, obviously a lot's taken place since then. Seen a few more games since then.
Where's he on our all-time points list, Neil? For like the league.
He's
not in the top 10. Wow.
Well, I mean, it's 140. I think, what did I just say?
Yeah,
he was
at 110,
total?
I think. He's up there.
He was at 123 total when you combine regular season and postseason. I mean, to be at 123 and not be in the top 10 shows there's been a few good players in history, right?
Yep. That's what's shocking about it.
There's no defenseman even in the top 10. So I think I want to say him and Moreau's are probably the close 1-2 for.
I bet if Corey didn't get hurt, he would probably be close to.
And the other thing I wanted to point out before we get to the final 2D, to finish out our 6. Now, we didn't even mention this yet. Alex Wilkinson, as we said before, obviously went on to play at Army. In 3 seasons as a defenseman in the EHL, 3 seasons, right? He had 8 PIMs.
Jeez. Oh, what? Lady Big right there.
So in 100,
he just graduated too last year from Army.
So in 141 games, he took 4 penalties.
Oh my God.
Dude, and then look at college. He played 132 games and only had 18 penalty minutes.
Like, when we finished up the all-time lineups this summer and we do the all-time lineup of the all-times, like this is the defenseman leader.
Yep.
Like it has to be.
Yep.
Like, and I think that what we have to say is like defensemen, you can easily just somebody goes around you and you catch your stick in their skates 2 minutes, right? Like this
tripping,
kid,
hooking, 2 most common things, right? Guys
4 times. Oops. 4 times. How many kids do we have in the league that got 4 penalties in a game?
Yeah. Oh my God. I can think of way too many.
It shows you how sturdy he is. He was really
so
good
sturdy.
In Army too.
So sturdy, right? And
so
the other D that we're gonna fill the final spots with, obviously, we're looking at the all-time points list here. We kind of have to go a little bit down the list. I think I want one to be this.
Oh my God, Half-Cent.
Oh, I saw his name earlier.
Half-Cent.
Blake Halfpenny.
Half-Cent was his Instagram handle.
Half-Cent, which is hysterical. Like it's such a perfect.
And
he spent 2 years with the RoughRiders, and then obviously has advanced on to play at Chatham. Are you guys good with him?
Oh, Half-Cent, great with Half-Cent.
Half-Cent. Just for the nickname alone, you make.
I think Half-Cent is part of that. Like, wait, go back to his EP, please.
Brits Commits brought to you by Elite Prospects.
No, scroll up.
He's part of the Alaska clan.
Oh, never mind.
Oh, Eagle River.
NVM.
Okay, so
we're noticing a lot of good people from Alaska, good hockey players.
A lot of good hockey players have come from Alaska to here.
Yep.
For the last defenseman, I'm going to switch away from points to just being intimidating. And
Intimidating's good.
Like,
defense.
6'5" was scary when I first saw this kid. Charlie Pelnick, who spent probably, I think there's a season missing in here. But he was part of the RoughRiders when I first got in and went on to play at SUNY Oswego, which is one of the top Division III schools. You have to say?
Yeah.
I mean, year in and year out, there are a legit contender. We touch on Norwich all the time, but Oswego is there every year as well. We don't have to include him, though. He didn't spend as much time as I thought he did.
Unless there is a season missing, which there might be.
No, I just remember him from the playoffs that year.
Okay.
And
good playoff too. 6 games.
I want to say that 10 PIMs is because he fought this. Like, this is what I remember. He fought Schultz from the Monarchs. Jeff will remember him.
Yeah.
Schultz was like, I'm legitimately scared of that individual.
Scary.
You
see him, you walk the other way.
Maybe we won't go there, but I want to make sure we get this one right, because when we posted the Wizards last week, I instantly got a message on my personal Twitter from Ricky Kramer.
Oh, what's that?
Name another defenseman who led the Wizards in scoring. And when I went back and looked, there was a season where he was the leading scorer on the Wizards.
Yikes.
And I said, well, we may have missed that one. So we're not perfect. That's what I'm saying. We're not perfect. But
actually, what about Cam Cundy? Could be he was a captain. I think he was 13, 14, 14, 15. He could be a possibility.
We're going original, right?
Yeah, original oil.
Oh my God, another Plymouth State. Jesus Christ.
So here we go. You know what? I like it, Jeff. With the captain.
Oh my God, Pim's up the wazoo. Holy Jesus Christ.
He's the opposite of Alex Wilkinson.
He was a good old New Hand. I don't know.
He's like, Alex, let me show you what a penalty is called. Slash. What was that? 134 and 107? Okay, so we got 2.
Yeah, sheesh. He said, I love it here.
He's aggressive. I like this penalty box. This is my office.
That gives us one goalie left.
God.
And we obviously already have Michael Tilford taking up one of the spots. And we need to find another one here on this list. Instantly, the name that stands out to me would be Jeremy Telvin, who was a 1-year goaltender for this team. I'm dating myself now. 2017-18 season. You guys are not going to guess this either, but there's a small Maine connection in there.
Oh,
he played at NYA, North Yarmouth Academy, which is a prep school in Maine. His numbers in the EHL were actually, take the main part out of it. His numbers in the EHL were actually pretty solid in that 2017-18 season. He won 20 games, 2.69 and a 9.11. Obviously, I think Tilford's numbers are so outstanding that everything else looks a lot smaller compared to him. Yep. But I would say here's our second goalie right here.
Jeremy Telvin.
Put him in.
Okay. And that will
there it goes.
Round out our roster. I think I saw a Sweden icon in there too. A lot of Sweden connections,
a lot of guys
obviously.
Go Sweden.
Well, yeah, Steven loves the foreigners.
And Stephen Brown coached in Sweden for a while. He told that story during our interview, and I think he would love to coach there again.
He definitely would.
If he had the chance to. So that rounds out our lineup. Just to read it back, the forwards, Walker Harris, Nick Germain, Joe Wydmar, Alex Roella, Andrew Bella, Todd Jackson, Will Christensen, Cullen Kane, Ludwig Steenberg, Tyler Bonapane, Mitchell Parsons, and Brett Backman. Defensemen, Alex Wilkinson, Connor Boyce, Mark Happy, Gray Owens, Blake Halfpenny, Cam Cundy, goalies Michael Tilford and Jeremy Telvin, and then the utility. The utilities worked out great in back-to-back weeks. This time the utility was we want to have the Bella brothers, so we have Colin Bella listed there. Which
Good
then
addition, EP Squitieri. Well done.
It shifts us back up north, Brittany, and let's go with
I want to do
a newer team. Pick a newish team.
So my suggestion was either going to be the Red Train, or let's just go NHA. I think NHA.
Well, Chris wants me to hold off a few weeks, so I have him right around his main camp.
Okay, so run it back, Seahawk Hockey Club.
Oh, Xander would be a great interview too.
Okay. And of course, we could touch on a new EHLP team coming for the Seahawks Hockey Club as well.
New logo.
New so SHC it is.
And okay. I will, as Jeff mentioned, point out the new logo as well. And
check her out.
I'll have to see if he wants me to do the breaking news on who his EHLP coach is, because we've texted about that, but I'm not sure if he's ready to announce that yet. So we'll see.
All right, well, you can tell us as soon as you hit the end record button, because now I need to know.
So that does it for the Rough Riders. It's the Seahawks coming up next week, and we'll talk to you guys then.
Giddy up.
Good. Giddy up.
Thanks for listening to The E-Show. Learn more at easternhockeyleague.org and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Also, be sure to subscribe and get notified when next week's podcast is released.